So how's the day going?
It's been good. It's been good. Had to pick my partner up from the airport. He's just flown back from being working offshore. So I've just been home a little while, really, and getting myself reorganised after doing quite a lot of driving.
Wonderful. So I checked out your websites and your books. Looks like you are involved in so many things. You are not just a coach, you're also a hypnotherapist and you have other credentials, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, I
So,
have a range
yeah,
of interests.
how did you started your coaching program?
Well, really, that I suppose it grew out of two avenues. One from the hypnotherapy, I get to
Mm-hmm.
work with a lot of people one on one, and very often after I've helped them to deal with, say, a crisis or a habit that's really troubling them, or grief, or a big change in their life. Very often they want to keep moving forward, and
Mm-hmm.
hypnosis helps you to become really mindful, and they really want to take that further. So I start to work with them more in a mentoring or coaching way that helps them to really develop themselves as rounded, well-balanced people who can focus and achieve their goals. And then the second side of that is that when I was in my 30s, I was headhunted into sales training,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realise I had an aptitude for it, but other people spotted it, and I very quickly moved into international sales training and found that I could really help people to overcome their fears, to understand the key concepts of solving problems for people, which is what making a great sale is about, is
Mm-hmm.
you have a product or service that solves someone's problem. So helping people to be able to identify the problems that their product solves, and to really understand how to connect with the values of the people that they may be serving, who are their clients. So there are
Yeah.
two avenues, and both have helped each other. So the things that I've learned through the corporate world have helped to shape and inform me in my individual practice, but then the knowledge that I have about personalities and the
Mm-hmm.
human mind and our ability to change really helps me within the corporate realm.
Beautiful. So do you still work with salespeople and help them overcome fear of rejections, or who is your clientele now?
So I'm very often called into organisations when there is some kind of transition going on. So if there's a merger, if a company's been taken over, if someone, maybe in a small to medium business has bought a business and is now trying to implement a new culture or culture change,
Mm-hmm.
I'm often brought in to help that process, and then often used over time to come in and take the organisation through different
Mm-hmm.
steps. I have worked as an interim general manager, and been responsible for the complete around an organisation. So I've done that as well from time to time.
Wonderful. And you also known as a coach for human potential. So how do you
Yes.
help a person to unleash their full potential?
So I've developed a series of models that I use that are kind of diagnostic tools that help me to work out where a person's great strengths and aptitude are, where their real purpose is, and help them to focus on how they can put more of their time and energy into maximising and expressing that purpose and achieve value in return. So give great value and be well rewarded
Mm-hmm.
for they're delivering, and then what things in their life they are then perhaps able to mentor, maybe not so passionate about it anymore but very skilled, that they could be either coaching or mentoring or passing on to others, what things they really need to just outsource to other people because they aren't things that they're either good at or energized by, and then what things they should be working on for the future. So I do a lot of I suppose succession
Mm-hmm.
planning or coaching with people. So they may be, doing very well in their business, but they want to either sell that business in the future or pass it on to family members, and they want to move into the next phase of their life, which may be a different stage in their career, or it might be retirement. So working on building up a skill set that will help you to do that transition is really, really important to being the best you can be, being
Mm-hmm.
happy, and also being able to let go. I see a lot of organisations sabotage the people that they're leaving the organisation to, because they don't want to let go. And so helping
Yeah.
people to find where their next calling is makes that so much easier. They become gracious then.
Amazing. So at least you just mentioned you help a person to find their purpose and maybe next vision. So many people are struggling with figuring out their purpose. How do you do that?
So I use a timeline process where, and I have all of this detailed in the energy code. So if people want to go over what I'm talking about, you'll be able to do that through the book and through the workbook, which is also available through my website. But what I do is I take them through a timeline and I get them to kind of divide the line into decades from birth to the present. Work out in each of those decades what were the things that stood out most about those decades, and what did they learn, lose, rejoice about, or grieve in each of those decades. So write the detail, and we do that below the line. So that's the stuff, that's the detail and content of life.
Yeah.
Then once that's done, we look above the line and we go, okay, so for each of those decades, what did you make that stuff mean? What kind of life lesson or rule or value did you create out of the experience of each of those decades? You know, for some people, they could have the same experiences but draw completely different meaning. So, I was a very sick child, but because that was my life from a young age, I learnt to use my imagination. I developed a very good pain threshold. I developed ways to kind of project myself into the future and see what my life could become. So even though I had terrible illness and suffering, I don't think of that as a bad time. It was a foundation of my character in that era. But somebody else could have gone through the same experiences and perhaps with a different environment may look back on that time with horror and fear. So we can make similar experiences mean different things. And that's really important because that becomes our dogma. They influence together our mindset, what we believe about the world. Whether we think the world is a place full of potential, or whether we think the world is out to get us, or whether we think we're completely insignificant and what we do doesn't matter, or whether we have an overblown sense of ourselves and we think that we're all that matters. And so then the next step, after we work out what each decade, you've made each decade mean, what belief you've created, we then, okay, what's the overarching, what's a concept, what's some of the concepts that you drew from your life? And that starts to get people to abstract about their life, to be able to look at their life more objectively and not be so immersed in the past as a victim or in the past as something out of their control. And then once we've worked out what that concept is, it's sort of like if you had to write the story of your life, what would the tagline be? So what would the tagline of your life be? Would it be, adversity creates opportunity, or the secrets of surviving, a broken marriage childhood, or would it be climbing Mount Everest? So what would be like the tagline of your autobiography from that information? And then from there, we create a contextual word, like one word that really sums up who you are. And, for me, it's actually the word is destiny. And so very early on, having a rare genetic condition and my parents being told constantly that they should prepare themselves for the worst, that I was not going to make it, that, I'd be dead at 3 and 5 and 7 and, 12, I'd never make it to adulthood. Constantly being given terrible, terrible news. But for me, I found a way to manage myself and my condition, and my lifelong quest was being, how can I shut off or minimise the impact of that destructive DNA, because my condition's genetic. How can I shut that off so that what they're telling me isn't my destiny? And so for me, it's like, I may have been born with this kind of genetic, death sentence, but at each time I managed to change that death sentence into a life sentence. And by reflecting on that as an adult and working with lots of people, I came to understand it's these 7 key principles that if you manage them, then you can be much more in control of what gets switched on and what gets switched off in your genetic code. So for me, having that understanding of we are the co-creators of our destiny. Yes, we get this amazing inheritance of genetic codes, most of which don't get switched on in our lifetime. But, you know, they're kind of like apps. It's a great way to explain them. You know, if you have a lot of apps running on your phone or your computer, have you noticed that, like, your battery dies really quickly?
Yeah.
And it uses up a lot of memory. So it's like that with human beings. If a lot of apps are running, some of which might be creating allergies or digestive problems or migraine headaches or more serious illnesses or anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, they're all running, that's exhausting. Can you just, you know, that is really exhausting. So what I talk about is how can we shut each of those apps that we don't want running down? And then we get a lot more energy to put towards the things that we're really passionate about that bring us joy.
And all of those 7 codes are in your book?
Yes, they are. And the processes to through, you know, finding out what your purpose is. And then, you know, that's really key. Knowing what makes you energized and passionate and love life is so, and knowing what doesn't, so you can say no to those things. It's
Absolutely.
really and then the 7 keys help you to then focus your energy on the things you want and switch off the things that you don't.
So what are some of those 7 keys, like 2 of them?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is mindset. So that exercise that we just did is really about understanding the mindset you've created out of the things that you've made your life experiences mean. And mindsets are really sets of mind maps. So everything that you do repeatedly has a mind map for it. And I don't know if you've heard the term mind map before, but it's literally neural pathways, neurons firing up in a pattern together because you've repeated a behaviour. So talking has a mind map attached to it that will fire off lots of different neurons in different parts of the brain. Reading, another mind map. And I liken it to when you walk through the snow. And I think you're not in too cold a place in the States, but I was speaking to a viewer yesterday, and they're in Minnesota. They had 4 feet of snow, so it was a good analogy for that. When you walk through the snow, it's easier to walk on a well-trodden path than to walk in the deep virgin snow. Would that be right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so a mind map is like a well-trodden path through the snow. It's just easy. It doesn't require a lot of thinking or energy to walk down that path. Now, that's great if it's a useful mind map, like it's getting you somewhere you want to be. But what if it's a destructive one, like smoking or overindulging in alcohol or, you know, sitting on the couch instead of exercising? That's easy to keep treading that path, but is it useful?
Yeah.
And the trouble is when we try to do something different, it's like walking through 4 feet of snow the first few times. Like, it's hard work, and we keep looking over at that easy path going, yeah, but that's so easy. Why can't I go over there? Because you'll just get what you've always gotten. If you want to get something different, you've got to go face the 4 foot of snow. But what's interesting is that if you're mindful and you're present in the experience of walking through the 4 feet of snow, it doesn't have to be a horrible experience. It could be an amazing experience. It could be expanding your experience, looking at a different view because you're not facing the same way. You're expanding your view of the world. You're exercising different mental and physical muscles. And then before you know it, you've trod that path a few times. It's getting easier. It'll become the clear path. And that old path, the snow's been falling down on it, and now it's not so easy to see. So I talk a lot about how we can use this understanding of our mind maps to change our behaviours and how they add up to a mindset. So I say to people, you know, if the results you're getting in your life right now are not making you happy, if you're unhappy with what's going on in your life, then there's going to be something in your mindset that needs to shift. And it's just made up of lots of maps that all fire together to create a behaviour. So being mindful allows you to go, oh, hang on. Oh, so every time I go out in an environment where I'm uncomfortable with people, I drink alcohol and then I start to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if I don't go out to that same environment, I change, I make a different choice. I'm not saying stay home, but go to a different environment with people you are more comfortable with, where you don't have to feel that you've got to imbibe alcohol to relax and feel comfortable. Then you won't start that pattern of drinking and smoking.
Absolutely.
So that's an easy way. In the business world, it's about, if you have a habit of not, getting your taxes filed on time, then what steps can you take to make sure your taxes are filed on time? Should you be getting help? If you're really rotten at it, put steps in place so that it's done and it's in on time. Don't repeat the old patterns. So lots and lots of things like that. And the second thing that I'd like to talk about, which, a lot of the keys that I discuss are things people have heard before but not put together in this way. But the one that is, really crucially in my own observation is the importance of understanding what kind of productivity mode you're in. So, sensing in your body, right now, am I feeling highly constructive? Am I optimistic and positive in my attitude right now? Do I feel really energized and capable for the task in front of me? Am I prepared? And am I excited and energized by what I'm about to do? If you are, then you're in a highly constructive mode and you're going to be so impactful. You're going to add incredible value through what you're doing, and you should be rewarded pretty well for it. And part of that makes it even more powerful is I talk about a number of studies that showed that our electromagnetic fields that are emanated by our DNA communicate with our environment for at least 10 metres around us. Pulse wave information on those electromagnetic frequencies that other people, animals and things pick up. And so how we're feeling radiates and is broadcasted out and affects those people. So when we're really constructive and energized and passionate, it's infectious, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Pick up on it. So that mode makes teams productive and constructive and empowered, and people get so much done. Really interesting work that's been done around flow and peak experience, that when we are feeling really good in ourselves and when we feel safe and can focus on what we're doing, we have complete intent on that, but we're physically able to let go because we're not worried about someone stabbing us in the back or undermining us, we can get into a state where our frontal lobes shut down, and it's a thing called hypofrontality. It creates that meditation high, that runner's high, that feeling that everything is kind of just coming together perfectly. We notice the tiniest detail. We feel connected in almost like an ESP way to the people we're working with, We get what they're saying without them having to explain it. You increase your productivity by 250% in that state.
Wow.
So why wouldn't you want your workplace to have that level of productivity?
Everybody would like that, yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if you could turn up to your workplace, have mindfulness about your energy state, know that you're in a constructive place, and then just broadcast that out into your workplace? How cool would that be?
Yes. So, Liz, is there any way people can change their emotions, their state, maybe by moving their physical body? As they say, emotions are created by motions.
Exactly. It's emotion, energy in motion. And the other key principles are all about that. So really treating yourself a bit like an elite athlete, in that you think about the things that you're ingesting serving you to be in that peak state. Are they serving you to actually perform to your best? Or are those things making you feel sluggish, making you feel tired, making you feel grumpy? Is drinking a lot the night before really going to help you to perform at your best the next day if you have a headache or a hangover? Or if you're sensitive to gluten, is having that granola bar, after lunch because you got the nibblies, and then your stomach hurts and you're uncomfortable for the rest of the day. Well, you're broadcasting that. That's going out You might say, no, I'm fine. No, I'm all good. But your DNA is broadcasting out something else altogether, and that's what
Wow.
other people pick up. So that, and your, activity, doing activity that makes you feel good, getting up and moving, not staying stagnant, because when we're stagnant, our energy levels drop. Keeping hydrated, drinking enough water throughout
Yeah.
the day is really important. And then, even if you do all of those things, you're still going to have days where, you just wake up and it's a bit crappy. And so it's actually going, okay, so today is not a day necessarily to be broadcasting out to a large range of people how I'm feeling. So that's a great day to either, depending on whether you are a consultant, self-employed, or an employee. But, deciding, okay, should I just be doing some stuff at home where I'm just analytical and I'm going to use my grumpiness to find where the problems are and get those sorted? Or do I just need to pamper myself today? Am I just really tired, and do I need some pampering? Do I need to just take a day off and re-energize myself? Because one of the biggest issues in business is people turning up to work and they're absent mentally. So they're there in the chair, but they're not connected and they're actually not producing. And that's a big problem for all business. So and you can imagine if that gets contagious, that's a really bad problem. Yeah. So really enabling people to have the flexibility to have bought into a value system in a workplace where you can decide where your best level of productivity is going to be. Are you a champion day? Are you highly constructive? Are you deconstructive? And if you're around people, you're just going to be a nitpicker and cause fights and be gossipy. If that's the case, then maybe you need to work on your own for that day and just go look for problems and sort them. Is it a day where you just need to pamper yourself and, go to a conference, get re-energized, get inspired, get the zing back? Or is it more serious than that? Have you burnt out? Have you just worked so hard that you're empty, there's nothing left to give? In which case, maybe you need to go take those holidays that you've probably put off and not taken for the last 3 years. So understanding where you are on that productivity map is really important. And for managers, it's crucial. If you want to get the best out of people, you want your highly constructive teams to be led by people that are highly constructive. And you also need to know that they can only do that for so long. And you've got to give them either pampering time or time on holidays away, just recharging their batteries. And when you get someone who's starting to be a real nitpicker, and just negative all the time, is okay, how can I really utilize that skill right now? They've got negative focus. Keep them away from others, but get them looking for problems and just reporting to you so they don't spread it like a contagion. Because sometimes they find problems before they actually, hit the fan. And so each mode of productivity is really valuable as long as you're using it properly. When you get a person in destructive mode to lead a team, where do you think that goes? Absolutely. It's not a nice place.
Yeah. So Liz, if somebody wants to work with you, do you take only local people, or you have Skype and phone consultations? How do you work?
Yeah, so I work through Skype, through Google Hangouts, and web conferencing, depending on the tools of the organisation. Skype is really easy, but sometimes organisations prefer different tools, and also by phone. So I have clients all around the world in all different time zones, and I'm used to doing the time conversion. And I've worked in the United States and in Europe, so I'm really familiar with the different work ethoses and the different expectations of different cultures. So people can get in touch with me through my website. So the website is elisabettafaenza.com. I'm sure you'll have that in your article. And they can go onto the website and they can click on the contact form and get in touch with me, or they can contact me through my social media. So through Twitter, which is @LizFaenza, and that's Liz spelt with an S. Or through, Facebook, and I have a number of accounts, but they're all on my page, so you can just click on those links and connect. And then I'm also starting a new program called Activate DNA, and that'll be launching next week. And that should be in time for when the magazine comes out. And Activate DNA takes people through a 12-month program of developing themselves, really helping their strengths to get to that highly productive, high value end, and learning how to manage any weaknesses, helping them to understand their personality, how to bring out the best in others, gaining mindfulness tools. So, yeah, over a 12-month period, they'll go through a program of audios, videos, and documents to help them to achieve their goals.
And is it weekly or every single day they will receive information in this program?
So every month they'll receive a series of documents, audios, and videos, which they can use at their own leisure during that. And they can, of course, contact me via email, to ask questions. And I'll be organising, small group conference video calls, probably through Google Hangout. We've just done some recently. And they're really fun because people can all, ask questions. I can show a particular video or tool and demonstrate it, and then they can all participate with that. So it should be a lot of fun.
Looks like you have extremely high levels of energy, and it's very contagious. So do you have any rituals to stay so energized?
So the condition that I have means that I have to have a good diet. I don't have any choice. So, and interestingly, despite the trends, my condition means I have to be very careful with protein levels. I have to keep my protein low. So, and some interesting studies recently showed that having a day or two where you fast or are low protein actually increases your longevity and your ability to fight off illness or recover from serious setbacks. So it turns out that's actually not a bad way to be. I eat mainly fresh foods. I'm not a vegan. I do eat some meats. I just have to be really careful about quantities. So I might have 1 or 2 days a week where I might eat, fish or chicken or maybe, some red meat, but usually small amounts. I eat a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables. I'll have things like yogurt. And I exercise because I have to actually get rid of even the protein in that. I have to exercise. So you can kind of see my equipment in the back. My treadmill and my RPM bike, and I wear one of these polar loops so that I can track, and it's great for me because I can track whether I've hit my targets and I'm keeping my protein levels at bay. And since I've been using this kind of tracking, I've actually had the best. My blood tests have been the best that they've ever been. So my nutrient levels are good, and for the first time in my life, I'm not anemic, but my protein levels aren't over the top either. So information is power, and I try to, my day, like if I'm exercising, I like to get that information feedback about what my heart's doing, what my output is, all of that. I'm a bit nerdy like that. So I exercise every day. I eat sensibly, and I do what I love. And I think that
makes you happy.
Yeah, it makes me really happy. I'm so fortunate to have, from next week, I'll have 3 books.
Wow.
Basically in print, and 2 fiction, and then the Energy Code. And I have contracts for 2 more books for this year, 1 more fiction and 1 more non-fiction to write. So researching about, people and what makes them tick and what makes them better really excites me. And I have great conversations, with people like you, Katja, that are just, fantastic. And I go away, I elevated.
Congratulations on your books. Let's talk about books. So your first book, Energy Code, and the other ones. Can you tell me more?
So the Energy Code really was, I suppose, I was doing a lot of speaking at events and consulting, and I'd written a little book called The Energy Bucket, which had listed the key principles, but I kept gathering more and more research, and I was writing a blog, and I wasn't actually aware of how many people were reading this blog until a science magazine online emailed me and said, we're putting a permanent link to your blog because 8,000 of our subscribers read your blog. And I went, what? Wow. Like, how did that happen? So, I found that, people are actually really interested in this geeky science because it's about us as human beings. And so I kind of translate the science into language that people can understand. So the energy code is in three sections. The first section is really talking about the science and quantum biology, epigenetics, how our environment switches on those DNA codes or switches them off. The second section is, really all about the key principles. So out of that science, what can we extrapolate and apply to our lives right now? And the good news is every single one of those steps is inexpensive. We just change our behaviour. It's not, that we have to go and buy some expensive piece of equipment. When I lived on the coast, my walking was happening on the beach every day. So, that didn't cost me any money. And then the third section of the book is case studies. So I know a lot of people take things in through stories. So the case studies are individual clients, small businesses, large businesses and not-for-profits that I've consulted for, and how, we've used these principles to diagnose issues and aim to fix them and what the results were. So first section is really for the nerdy, geeky people like me that like the numbers and the science. The second section, is, okay, what's in it for me now? So the key principles. And there'll be people who just jump to that. And then the third section is, how does this work in the world? And some case studies and storytelling. But all of it fact. And I'm getting such good feedback from people, and I was thrilled when it became an Amazon bestseller over the new year. That was amazing. Watching the numbers coming through was like, I can't believe this is happening, in the best New Year's present ever. And then I have next week, I have the second in my fiction series coming out, and a lot of people say to me, "How come you do fiction and non-fiction?" Well, when I was a sick little girl and, I was at home a lot, I didn't go to school. I was homeschooled for most of, primary. And so I used to get all the work done, and then I would draw and paint and write stories. And I'd draw maps of worlds and create all sorts of things. And I loved history. So that started at a really young age. And now I have a fiction series set in the Crusades, which is steeped in a lot of history. So decades of research gone into it, but following a family of assassins through the Crusader period, and who find themselves on both sides of the crusade, and what happens to them and the secrets that they uncover. So I use my personality profiling to work out the characters and flesh out historical characters to be real people, and to create new characters to fill in the gaps.
Fascinating. What is the name of the book?
So the book's called Veritas. The first book in the series was called The Infidel, and the second book is called Veritas, which is the muse of truth, one of the virtues, one of the holy virtues. And the book is about, really where the characters start to uncover a deeper truth, that things are not what they seem on the surface. And things that really shake up their mindset. So my characters are constantly having their mindset challenged. They lived in a very narrow medieval world, where people could be indoctrinated very easily, and then find themselves in a completely different environment, and things don't add up, and they have to keep shifting their mindset and growing and being challenged and resisting it, not wanting to change, not wanting to let go of their bigotry or their beliefs about culture, people, and faith. And then they have to grow because evidence is presented that they can't deny. So I really use kind of my non-fiction skills in my fiction books too.
Wonderful. So many people go through life without changing their mindsets. Maybe only few percent that do change. How do you help them open up their horizon?
Yeah, I think, when someone comes to me as an individual, usually they come to me with a problem, something in their life they don't like. And sometimes they come in thinking that I'm going to give them magic tools to manipulate the people around them so they'll all change and everything will be okay. But actually what I give them is the ability to look at how they participate in the behaviours they don't like. Maybe they're causing them, maybe they're rewarding the behaviours that they don't like, and maybe the behaviours that they hold dear are creating an atmosphere that's allowing really not productive things to happen. So listening to someone, letting them tell their story, and then asking some poignant questions, about how they're viewing these things, and then getting them to look at it from a slightly different angle. And what's great about hypnosis is hypnosis puts you into that hyperfrontal perspective we talked about earlier, where the mind is more open, is timeless, and can look from different perspectives. Isn't so locked into here, it expands. And then people see an event, and the first time they see it from a different angle, not the same angle that they've always looked at it, and they gain so much from this different perspective. And then they get the opportunity to update that programming, how they have programmed themselves or were programmed in childhood. And we then use some tools that they can go away with, that they use to reinforce the new program, and work with that over the next month. And usually over a month you can shift a program, a mindset or a mind map into something more productive. Once they start, they want to keep going because it's such a cool thing, it's like, wow, the veil comes off and you go, oh my goodness, the world isn't the way I thought it was. And you feel empowered. That's the most important thing. You're empowered because you can make the change from inside that will change how your life is experienced.
Absolutely. What would be your words of wisdom to anybody who wants to expand their vision and really change their mindset and get rid of limiting beliefs?
I think finding a really good mentor. Now, it's important to choose someone who is achieving the things that you'd like to achieve or has the outlook that you'd like to have. And ask them if you can hang out with them, and it may be that you're paying them for the mentoring, or it may be someone that you have a close enough relationship with that, they'll let you hang out, have coffee once a week or something like that. And listen to them, because if they've got the life that you want, then they're the one with the wisdom, So often people will want mentoring and then they don't let their mentor impart the wisdom. So find people who are qualified to give you insight, not necessarily advice. They're not there to tell you how, what you should do, but they may give you tools and an outlook that helps you to find your own solutions or choose between two different pathways because they've had to make similar choices. And then you can see in their life, well, how did those choices pan out? And very often when you're working with a mentor, the biggest benefit is that they tell you about the mistakes beforehand, and that's really useful because you go, oh, yeah, that's what they were talking about. And so you're not kind of blindsided by it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then the other part of that is I see so many people who try to change their lives and their mindset, but they don't change their environment. They're still hanging out with the same negative people. They're still hanging out with the people that are engaging in the behaviours that they want to leave behind. And no, it's hard to accept, but, that whole electromagnetic broadcasting, if you're in a room full of people that have a negative mindset or, act out in behaviours that you no longer want to participate in, they're broadcasting into you the whole time. And because there's more than one of them, that has a lot of power. It's very hard to diverge from that if you're in that environment. And so seek out environments that are filled with the people that model the behaviour that you want to adopt. Really crucial. And stop asking those people who are unqualified for advice, because they're all going to tell you, no one ever succeeds. No, you give up, you'll be back. You can't kick it. You're just like one of us. Don't try for anything better. Be happy with your lot. Be one of the boys or one of the girls. And, statistics show our life becomes like the life of the people who surround us.
Absolutely,
so who are we surrounding ourselves with?
So you can get rid of your negative surroundings, get rid of your friends and peer group. But what do you do with your family? Some people have extremely negative family members that criticize them and let them down.
Yeah. And so that's about boundaries. And one of the big habits that we have, especially with older siblings or with parents or uncles, grandparents, is we will go to them for approval. So instead of, say, we've got a really great mentor, we're changing our life, we're changing our behaviours, but we keep checking in with the people who made us the way we were and like us the way we were, and don't want us to change. And we keep asking them for, what do you think? And of course they're going to go, I don't know, that I think that's really risky, or no, but nobody in our family has ever done that, or what do you mean you don't need to eat 3 helpings, of dessert? I'm insulted you're not eating my cooking. So, it's hard. I come from a European, a Mediterranean family where, cooking is really important, and, you eat to please people. But, at some point you've got to know what's right for you, and be able to say, I really love what you've cooked for me, and I love myself, so I'm only going to eat this much. And me not eating the rest isn't an insult to you, because I love you dearly and I love your cooking. But if I don't listen to what my body needs, then I'm not loving myself. And so with families, and then if you've got families that continue to be destructive, is just create boundaries around the environments in which you immerse yourself, kind of put a bubble around yourself, and just create a little distance. One of the biggest things for me is I had a very, very destructive family member. And for 4 years, I couldn't talk to this person. And in those 4 years, I did an enormous amount of healing. And I never thought that I'd probably see them again. And yet, by that 4-year mark, they contacted me because they had gone through a whole lot of healing. They despised me when I stopped communicating with them. But over that time, they got really sick. They had to kind of look at themselves and realize that their behavior had been terrible, like awful behaviour, and came and asked, for forgiveness. I would never have expected that person to ask for forgiveness in a million years. And yet a miracle happened during the time that I just focused on looking after my well-being and healing myself.
Beautiful.
It didn't mean that I didn't love them. I just knew that they were toxic. You can love someone and choose not to give them power in your life.
Absolutely.
And that's really important.
These are powerful words, powerful statements.
Yeah. And I think, separating people from their behavior sometimes is useful when you've got these. You can say, I love you, but your behavior, or this particular behavior, is really damaging to me. And so I need to remove myself from it. Most of us haven't grown up with anybody role modeling that kind of behavior, so we don't know we can do it. But you can, because at the end of the day, who you spend time with, what you focus on, is under your control. No one can make you focus on them. You have to decide to let them take your focus or not.
Absolutely. So is there anything else you would like to mention that we didn't cover that might inspire your readers?
Well, I think, that the great thing is that we don't need to be unbalanced in our lives. We don't need to be workaholics to succeed. Most of the recent research is showing that if we just turn up and are highly productive, we get to have more time off, because we can do so much more in the time when we're on, when we're switched on. And so rather than thinking that productivity equates to hours and hours and hours at work, neglecting our relationships, neglecting our physical health, eating badly, not exercising, burning the candle at both ends, over the long term, that doesn't create productivity. That creates underperformance, it creates mistakes, it creates a really negative work culture. Whereas turning up, being really focused, being able to deliver highly, gives you the freedom to switch off and go home and be with the people you care about and choose to eat well and enjoy your meals rather than trying to squash them in between, meetings. Have adventures, inspire ourselves, because all of those things fuel us to be much better in our relationships and much better at work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Did we cover everything, or should we, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, the other thing that I might add, if it's okay, is about, I'm working on a book that'll come out later this year, about August, September, which is a follow-on from the Energy Code, and it's Unlocking the DNA of Leadership. And the research I'm doing right now is really, really interesting because I'm looking at the role of psychopaths in the workplace. And I'm looking at how they shape organizations and how they can even shape our culture, and how they're less than 3% of the population, like 2% of the male population and 0.5% of the female population are psychopaths. And yet, because they often rise to the top in organizations, they dictate the whole culture of those organizations,
Wow.
turning them into psychopathic organizations, which don't care about your family life, which don't care about your health, which just care about extracting as much out of you as possible before they discard you. And this is one of the reasons that I think the Y generation and the millennials are not engaging with corporate culture, because they've seen it at work in their parents. They've seen their parents give everything to work and end up sick, exhausted, burnt out, and in some cases through the GFC, financially ruined. And I think they're choosing as generations to just not participate in those psychopathic cultures. So I'm looking forward to exploring this and sharing it with my readers, and see what change we can make, in the cultures of companies, so that we can attract the very best of the young people, that are around us and their talent, and help them to become the best that they can be.
This is fascinating research. I've never heard anything like that before. I think it's going to be first book on that.
It's kind of my realization. And I think what's really crucial is when I saw the statistics for wealth disparity that came out from Oxfam, where they showed that by next year, for the first time, the top 1% will own more than the bottom 99%. So that shocked me, and I thought about it, and I went, you know what? There's a correlation between the percentage of psychopaths in our population and the percentage of people that own most of the wealth. And that's not to say that everyone who's wealthy is a psychopath, but it means that because psychopaths rise to the top, they shape the organizations. So people have to mimic those behaviors to get to the top. And so that's why you might not care if it lies. I mean, there's a scandal out today about HSBC laundering billions of dollars in helping people to hide money, the wealthy end of town to hide money from the IRS and other tax agencies throughout the world, and launder money for criminals like gun runners, people traffickers, drug dealers. Now, this is a major organisation about it. So the accusation came out in 2009, and apparently there's lots of evidence about it, but people should look into that for themselves. But it's an example of that organisation had to put aside all of the normal morals and sense of what's right and wrong in order to further its own goals and the goals of people who are actually really antisocial and destructive to society.
Wow, that's interesting.
So part of what I'm doing in leadership is how do we create leaders who are not following the psychopathic model, who know who they are, who know what their values are, and who then help others to live in their values rather than let people with no values run the show.
Yeah, I am interested to read your book. That's an interesting
Well,
statistic.
make sure you get a copy when it comes out.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
I'm through.